Welcome to Rock Solid, the Round Rock Business Leaders Podcast. Join your host, Bryan Eisenberg, as he explores the journeys of entrepreneurs and companies across Round Rock, Texas. From startups and nonprofits to large organizations, each guest shares their passion for doing business in this thriving community. Let's dive in.
Hi, everybody. It's Bryan Eisenberg here with Rock Solid, and I'm here with Logan Dunaway. You're a IT specialist, but really focused in on SMBs now. Tell me a little bit about how you decided to get into the SMBs.
It's actually just an area of passion for us, and not just for myself, but the whole team. We spent most of our careers in the enterprise world. So we were working for like the big shops, the IBMs, the Dells, large global organizations. And we got to a point where we said, look, we feel way more fulfilled servicing that small and medium business world because we're so much closer to that end customer. Mm-hmm. There's a part in that large organization where you're just too far removed from the customers, how the bread is made. And so it's hard to make decisions that really have a tangible impact, or where you can see that tangible impact. And that's just not the case in the smaller business world. When you're able to see, hey, here's what I did and here's how this business is now successful as a result of that, that's such a fulfilling feeling. So being able to get back into that and build a business focused on that has been really, really fun.
You know, it's funny because we were talking a little bit about digital transformation, and I've got those gray hairs to show. I was in the very early days of the internet. In fact, my first online experience was when I ran a bulletin board in 1983.
Okay, you've seen it all then.
On my Atari 800, hacking code to make sure people were going places. That was my first conversion optimization work, was way back then.
The OG.
But I lived through the early days of the internet, early 90s, mid 90s. I coined the term conversion rate optimization, bounce rate, bunch of those. And I'm looking at where the world is today with what we're going through with AI. And it was such a rapid transformation.
Yeah.
And I look at what you're telling me now about wanting to work with SMBs, because when we first started, no one cared about the internet. We were working with all these small businesses, and then of course we worked with the Dells and the IBMs and Microsoft and Google, and all these big companies, Disney. And then we decided we couldn't work with them anymore.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
Because I have a friend, Mark Hoffman, used to work for Procter & Gamble, and he used to say, these big companies are like dinosaurs. Big bodies, the head up on top. They can see what's happening forever.
Yeah.
But to move that big body and to have an impact is really hard. And so when we decided to stop working with the big companies, part of it was how long it took for them to make an effort, but also the impact you make. When you go ahead and you make an impact on a small business, sometimes you're double, tripling the income. It's directly to them.
Yeah.
And to the small business, that doesn't happen. The big business doesn't happen.
It's really interesting. I mean, we use the analogy of the ship, a large cargo container, right? They take a very long time to turn because you're moving a lot of mass. And this has actually led to what I'm trying to position as the revolution in the small and medium business world. I think a lot of people are very concerned about what they're seeing with AI adoption, how that's impacting the labor market. And I see it as being this great opportunity for smaller and medium-sized businesses because they're more agile. They don't have this giant infrastructure or mass of people. They can be way more rapid in terms of how they can deploy the technology if they have the right expertise. And the great, I mean, I don't want to say that anybody is profiting off of the tragic layoffs that are occurring. This is hard, and it's not a fun experience to see.
It's a fundamental transformation of the workforce.
But what I would also say is that the benefit to the SMB world is that you have all this great enterprise-grade talent who's leaving the enterprise world, either by their own choice or otherwise. And now there's accessibility to this talent that understands how to do these things at scale. And they're either going to join existing small businesses and they can leverage that expertise.
Or start their own.
Or they're going to start their own. And that's why I think that we're on the verge of an SMB revolution, or this huge period of growth, because people need to work. They want to work. It's not even about the economic. And I don't want to get tied into the financials of how this impacts the macroeconomy, but people want to be able to build businesses. This is how so many people find fulfillment. And so that accessibility is going to grow. And the nice thing is, especially when we talk about adopting AI, you're not having to, the large enterprises are bolting it on. They've got existing processes. They have ways of doing things and steering the large cargo ship.
They're becoming platypus.
But with a lot of these newer small businesses, they can very quickly try it out, and if it works, great. If it doesn't, let's move on to the next thing with this technology and this digital transformation you started to talk about. It's not about, we look at the term fail fast, right? I want to try this. If this doesn't work out in a small business, the cost is low. The risk is low. If it doesn't work out in an enterprise, the cost can be catastrophic. So big differences in scale.
When you mentioned AI, and I think people don't comprehend the kind of scale that you can have. There's a gentleman I've been following on LinkedIn for a while. He was on my friend Fernando's podcast recently, and he's building what he calls the autonomous business, essentially, right?
Yeah.
It's 3 guys, and they're building everything with AI agents, and they're going to try to make I think 30 million MRR.
Sure. Yeah.
Right. Just with agents and not hiring anyone.
Yeah.
Do you see the average local small business being able to take advantage to that, not even to that scale, but along that scale?
Yeah, 100%. But I want to be very careful with how I articulate this point, because a lot of people look at that and they go, you're basically setting up robots to do all the work, and you have these great expectations in terms of what the revenue can be. There is definitely a market for that, but I would be very cautious about the way that you implement those types of agents and tools. They can be very powerful. They can also be dumb as rocks.
Yep.
And this is coming from somebody
and they hallucinate too.
Yeah, they do. And we could spend a lot of time talking about hallucinating. The way I describe working with a lot of these AIs, and they're very powerful, but if you remove the human expertise too far from what the agent or the AI is doing, there is a tremendous amount of danger there, because the way I've described it, have a 10-year-old with a palette of paint, and you're telling them how to paint the Mona Lisa, what it should look like. You can be very detailed. You can tell them exactly what brush and color to use, but at the end of the day, it's in their hands, and they're going to slap that paint on that canvas, and what comes out is their interpretation of Mona Lisa. And it's been interesting, even in the last couple of weeks, working with some of these agentic tools that a lot of business leaders want to learn more about. And in my own experience, I watch it take very simple instructions, and it's as unreliable as an intern. Sometimes it'll sit there and go, I'll tell it to perform an action and say, hey, take this data, do this with it, put it in this sort of table, make it work for me. And then I go in and it did about half. It stopped in the middle, kind of like that intern who just is trying to figure out their place in the world, and you give them a task, but you don't really want to watch over their shoulder, and they just stop in the middle. And so there are a lot of flaws and challenges and growth that AI and agents need to go through to be a reliable tool. But the other bigger caution that I would have with these, we're all about AI, there's no humans, it's all agents doing all the work, and this is where SMBs are really going to shine, they are removing the humanity from the business.
Correct.
And there's going to be a point in the not too distant future where more and more of us as consumers are going to demand that human element in the interactions and the engagement we have with these businesses. And so for the companies that are going all in on AI and are replacing thousands of people with these cost-saving tools, I think they're going to lose out a bit on what makes them connect with their customers and what makes their customers want to do business with them.
It always comes back to humans buy from humans.
It does, yeah, 100%. We need, and there. It's interesting when you look at the folks that are pushing this really isn't necessary, and we can create AIs that are indistinguishable from a human. You'd be surprised, and it's usually the people that have the most to benefit from that mentality that are pushing that mindset and that message the hardest. I think what a lot of people are going to find is that they want to be able to find empathy and the people they're working with. Call centers are a really big case where AI is being used to replace people. And there's going to be a point where, it is indistinguishable, and people are just going to assume they're talking to an AI. And the fact that AI cannot really empathize with what they're going through is going to impact their willingness to want to interact with that agent. And it's going to be funny because they're at some point
if I'm
work with a human.
Yeah, if I'm calling a call center that's all automated to book a haircut appointment and straight, simple, and I see a lot of small businesses starting to use some of these virtual agents.
Yep.
Sure, that's simple. If I'm calling because my roof is leaking,
there's an emergency.
I call the doctor, and all of a sudden I'm trying to get.
You need somebody who feels the urgency the way that you do. And yeah, it's just a danger. It doesn't mean, and I don't want to come off the wrong way. I'm not saying that there isn't a place and a way to use these tools. For as ourselves, as a relatively newer business in the last couple of years, we've benefited from AI in a lot of ways. It helps us to punch above our weight. It helps us to get things done faster and more easily. But at the same time, there are a number of dangers, and AI has to be implemented the right way to be successful. And in the small and medium business world, I would say even more so, because people are working with you as a small business because of that human element.
Okay, so talking about that human element and call centers, there's some big changes coming up in the fall, right? We were talking about all these bots being able to call you and stuff like that. And Apple's making a big change to how we get calls.
To their cold calling.
Yeah, let's talk about how that's going to impact businesses.
I'll give you the really short answer, and then I'll give you the long answer. It won't.
Okay.
It's funny because Apple's making a big deal about their call filtering, and the reality is that technology has been around for a while. And I did a bit about this a while back for all the salespeople that were nervous that it's the death of cold calling. Let's get past the sensationalized headlines. No, it's not. You just have to pivot a little bit. The effort you have to put in might be a little bit harder. But ultimately, it's not going to make a big change there. The concern is where the cybersecurity comes into play.
Okay.
You've got a lot more ability for these agent tools to impersonate people and commit fraud. And that's incredibly scary. And I think there needs to be a lot more education. And I think a lot of folks focus on the senior community because they are so easily targeted there. But the reality is I see people in the millennial and Gen Z generation fall victim to this stuff all the time.
Yeah.
So I think there's a drastic need for more conscientious security awareness training to help people understand what they can and cannot trust, how to find out, are you talking to a real human or are you talking to an AI scam tool? Because they are becoming a real problem.
Yeah. We've been talking so far about, AI and software and cybersecurity. It's obviously a big passion for you.
It is.
But do you also focus in on like the hardware side for small businesses?
Yeah, no, and there's so much that's coming to bear in terms of new technologies and ways of interacting with their customers. We see a lot happening in the real estate side and in the restaurant spaces where the IoT, Internet of Things, connected devices, there's so much more data that you can collect now and really improve the experience that your customers are having, whether that's technology in the office space, looking at behaviors of your tenants and what they need, where they're working and how they're working, but also like consumers in a restaurant. Being able to look at the data that you're able to pull from that and make intelligent decisions around your menus.
Or how long they're waiting for their food to be served before something comes to them. Like there's all kinds of data.
The integration of these technologies, there's a lot of benefit there to just being able to be able to judge performance and say, how are we doing? Is this what's best for our business? Where do we have room to grow? Where are the key performance indicators that we can push on to really make ourselves not just more competitive, but a real driver for great human experiences? And I think in the restaurant industry especially, that's going to continue to grow. We see a lot of trends in the large franchises, the Wolfgang Pucks and Gordon Ramsay restaurants. They're doing these things, and they're building their menus to fit what their consumer demands are. And so I think that's going to get into the local restaurants more and more as that technology becomes accessible.
Yeah, I remember several years ago, I drove up to Dallas to speak at a restaurant marketing event.
Okay, yeah.
And, I was the founder of the Web Analytics Association, became the Digital Analytics Association. So I've been thinking about how to use data for a lot longer, especially on the persuasion side than most people. And besides the menu selection, but, how fast you turn tables, right? So today you can, like, if you're just a restaurant serving food, if you're not thinking about, well, how fast do I get the first dish out to them? How long are they waiting before something? How long before the server meets them and greets? Like, all of these metrics can have a huge impact on your bottom line if you're paying attention to them.
It's interesting because I think that there's a lot of traditional restaurant owners, for example, that look at that and they go, well, do I really need the data? I know what the experience should feel like. I know when a customer's having a good time. And my caution to them is to remember, it's not just about you. You have to train and communicate those needs and be able to show the indicators of that performance to your staff and your people. And it's more than just going, we need to do faster at delivering the first dish. No, show them the data. Show them exactly what the real metrics for success look like. Then give them live data to work off and grow from. right? The accessibility and the speed at which we can deliver that information to a business has grown dramatically. And so it's very easy for a business owner to equate their lived experience and say, I know what this experience is. I see what the data tells me this looks like. Now I can put that in a way that my staff and team can learn from and execute on.
So when we're done here today, I'm running to Best Buy to pick up a printer. My wife and I, her home care business is expanding, so we're getting a new office space.
Great.
So my big question for you is, if someone's moving into a new office and they have to think about the technology they're going to be using in there, is that something you also provide?
100%. Yeah. No, when it comes to, and that goes back to the digital transformation, looking at what the needs are going to be. There's a lot of the core infrastructure. Printers are a big part of that sometimes that we look at and go, well, we have to have this. Do you? And are you right sizing that equipment for your needs?
Yeah.
I think a lot of the time we get caught up in, well, I've got to have X, I've got to have Y, and I've got to have Z. Well, maybe you do, maybe you don't. We can look at how we can maybe evolve some of the processes. And this goes back to where I think a lot of businesses got stuck in digital transformation. They said, I did everything on paper, and then I moved it into a digital platform of some kind. I see this a lot in the medical industry. Healthcare is big on this. We have electronic health records. We're done with transformation. It's like, well, no. There's all these things that are now available to you, from the kiosks that let people to walk in and check in and then go right to their room for their examination. There's all sorts of things that we can do to make or reduce the friction.
Enhanced.
Yeah. Improve
now
the
you're speaking my language.
Yeah. Cutting out the friction points in everything about that. That's what gets customers, patients, restaurant goers to come back again and again. Is you're providing them with a frictionless experience, and it's not just about. I think when you talk about friction, it's the digital side on the websites and all these sorts of things.
Yeah.
But really,
I always like to say, where there's friction, there's opportunity.
Exactly. And so fitting in the right technologies in those areas. And I want to be careful how I say that. That's not replacing people.
Yes.
That's not necessarily, you still need good experts and people who can help your customers, but being able to augment them with the right technologies, whether that's an iPad in the office space or, the right kind of printers for their type of work, that sort of decision making, we can bring a lot of expertise to that and say, here's what we've seen successful, not just in the other SMB businesses we work with, but we've seen this done at scale where there are hundreds of thousands of employees. And we leverage that experience and go, here's how you can do this economically. Here's how you can do this where you are going to get a tangible impact in your business.
Okay, so talking about friction, why is it so hard to buy a good printer? With the thousands of models out there.
Designed obsolescence is a big aspect there. I'll be honest.
Yeah.
As a technologist, printers are one of the most frustrating pieces of technology that we deal with. And in fact, we leverage a lot of other local experts who all they do is just printers, because they are such a unique mechanical and technological device combined. That you really do need a fair amount of expertise to get them to work right. But bringing in that expertise, right sizing the printer. You walk into Best Buy and you've got this whole selection of every kind of printer you can imagine, and you go, where do I even begin? Well, that really depends on what your business needs and what your spend is going to be like. And so right sizing the technology, having the experts come in and say, this is what's really going to work best for you, that can save you a lot of time and frustration.
But with the million models that they put out there, of M380, M320, and they're just one or two little small differences, and just to even keep them all in your head. See, it's a challenge.
And this is kind of the challenge. I think you bring up printers, but this is true with cell phones. This is true with laptops and desktops. There's so much variety.
Or making sure everybody who comes into your office, especially if you have people who are virtual coming in and out, everybody 100%. Can actually use all the equipment the right way. I know in one of the virtual offices that I was involved with, the Mac laptop could not connect to one of the printers. It connected to the other, but it couldn't connect to the one right next to them for some reason.
The cool thing is that there is a lot with everything coming out of COVID and the shift to working remote. There has been so much more of an emphasis on being able to make everything work in a hybrid format. And there's terms like zero trust that get thrown around a lot and I think are very poorly understood. But a lot of those same principles are, how do I make sure that I can interact and integrate with the technology, whether I'm working at home, working in the office, and those sorts of things. And again, this goes back to why SMBs are so powerful in this space. They can adopt these sorts of methodologies like zero trust, which is a cybersecurity principle, but the point is still the same. you're able to do these things that make you way more adaptable to the changing marketplace, to changing customer needs, than what a large enterprise is able to do. And so picking out the right technologies that help make that possible is really important. And this is where you need to lean on industry experts. Don't try and do this alone. I think there's unfortunately a poor perception that expertise is very expensive. It's not. We're like any other. When's the last time you had to replace a water heater with a plumber, right? You want to talk about expensive? Go replace your water heater.
Especially if there's roof damage afterwards.
100%, right? The
and
reality,
that happens in cybersecurity all the time.
Oh, all the time.
Ransomware and all that. Yeah.
But the bigger point is that this is an investment. And one of the things that we really focus on as an organization, we want to get the maximum return on that investment as possible. And so the longer you wait, and we hear this all the time, man, I wish I had done this earlier. I wish I had done this earlier. You're right. Because the sooner we can get in at a fundamental level and help you set things up in a way that is best for your business to grow, we can give you all the mechanisms and technology to help you. But it's so much harder to come in after all these things are in place and then have to rework everything to do it right. And so
you get a platypus again.
You do. You absolutely do get a platypus where you're kind of bolting things on, and that's not efficient. So being able to get these things done right from the outset is great. And we love working with startups and solopreneurs who go, well, this is where I'm at. I'm brand new. I just need help with some of the basics. Great. Let's get you a very fundamental set of support that gets you set up right. That way, as you start adding people and you start expanding your services, the technology grows right along with you.
Now, you've been servicing businesses in the area for a little while, right? How many years?
Yeah, we've been in business for about 18 months now. But it's interesting because that time frame, while short, we have decades of experience in the industry. And it's funny talking to people going, well, you've only been in business for a year and a half. How good could you be? I mean, last time I checked, the doctor that went from the hospital to private practice, nobody questioned how good he could be necessarily.
And maybe they should, but that's different.
Yeah, that's
a different question.
But a lot of it is, we've brought a lot of expertise that we're bringing to bear in a wide range of different topics and areas of expertise, and so we're able to very rapidly show value to a lot of these organizations and help them work through some of these challenges very quickly. In
these last 18 months, what is the most common kind of pain point that you're seeing these business owners have that they're like, come help me, Logan?
I'll touch on it briefly because I don't like talking about cybersecurity too much because I think there's a tremendous amount of cybersecurity fatigue going on. Service providers in the IT world are pounding the cybersecurity drum really hard, and it's not because it's unnecessary, and it's not because that message isn't really important. But I think it's causing a lot of business owners to go, you know what, this is too much. I don't like being painted into a corner. I'll deal with this when this comes up. Or they have the mentality of, we're too small to be a risk, to be worth hacking. And the reality is that is just not true. The barrier for entry, the barrier for value for a threat actor is so low. The calculation I ask business leaders to look at when they're considering whether or not to do anything beyond basic antivirus is take your last 3 months, average out your gross revenue, so you're across the three. Is that worth about 24 hours of effort? Is that dollar figure? Because about 24 hours is the amount of effort it will take a threat actor to take that money from you. And this is where we run into what you're talking about, these businesses that just don't realize that the danger that they're in, and we desperately want to help educate them. And I think that they perceive this as being a very expensive fix. It's not. It just requires the right tools being in the right place. We have a methodology we call defense in depth, which is a multi-layered approach to it. We close that barn door as much as we can with the point being, can we secure it without handcuffing your ability to do work? Which is a real challenge. And so they start working with vendors, they start working with tools, and they end up making it hard for their people to do their jobs because they don't understand how to implement those tools correctly, and they kind of miss some of the key elements there. And we see that very frequently.
Yeah, if you've been around a lot of corporate environments, sometimes when you think about the IT department, a lot of people like to call them the BPUs. You know what the BPU is?
I'm not familiar with the acronym.
Business Prevention Unit.
Oh yes. Yeah, 100%.
But in reality, when done right, IT should be in support of what the business needs are.
We should be a revenue multiplier, revenue enabler, not a
headache,
a headache and a barrier to these sorts of things. Unfortunately, it's a risk reward calculation, and we spend a lot of time with business leaders going, where is your tolerance for risk? What are the big things we can do that reduce risk in a big way? Where do we start to feel the pinch and the handcuffs come on a little bit? How do we do this in a nuanced and intelligent way so that you can still better serve your clients, but also keep yourself safe? And I say this a lot to healthcare providers because I think in anywhere where you have governance and regulatory compliance, HIPAA is unfortunately very gray in the way it talks about cybersecurity. I would always caution being more secure than not in those areas where you're dealing with a lot of healthcare information, PII, PHI, however you want to refer to it. But every business is dealing with the identities of their customers. Even if you're just running credit card transactions, you need to make sure that your systems are secure. And doing that is not that hard. It just requires the right tools.
Besides having some very interesting neighbors, thank you, Bill. What is it that you love about the work environment, the business environment here in Round Rock?
We love Round Rock so much. I think there's a tremendous amount of credit that's due to Chief Banks and his predecessors and the whole Round Rock PD force, because I think the safety that we experience here in Round Rock is a large part of why people want to be here. They want their businesses to be safe. Round Rock as a city is wonderful in the way that they have enabled people to come here and live the American dream. You can have a family, you can build a business, you can work for the big guys, you can be a small guy, and you can still be successful. And so we have just such great access to talent, access to good education. Migrating here, I like to say we migrated before it was cool, but we're part of that Northern California bunch that. But we came out long before COVID. And it was funny, my wife and I, we were looking at where we wanted to move. Our kids were just barely starting to get into school. And so she built this Excel spreadsheet with all the different things from weather to cost of living, the crime rates, education. And we saw Austin was at the top of that list. And we pulled up Google Maps, we're looking through it. And we, as faith-based people, we got to Round Rock, and all of a sudden we just got this feeling, this is where it's going to be. And we have loved every minute of being here. And it's just it's such a wonderful place of this amalgamation of great cultures, great people, great talent, and ultimately a safe place to live and raise a family. So we could not be more excited to be here.
Awesome. If people want to ask you some questions, get to know you better, connect with you, what's the best way to find you?
Honestly, we're a business-to-business company. LinkedIn is the place for business-to-business. So LinkedIn, Anil Tech is the best place there, or reaching out to us on our website, aniltech.com. You're welcome to reach out to me directly on LinkedIn as well. We're across all the socials, but honestly, I think we spend the most time there because that's where most of our customers spend their time.
Awesome. Appreciate your time today.
Thanks, Brian.